Unfortunately, the classically green and lush Vermont is becoming gray. All the young people are leaving as soon as they get the chance. Some people think that this is caused by the lack of job opportunities. Others say that there is not enough of a social scene or city life in Vermont compared to more urban areas. Our goal when creating this documentary was to figure out as much as we could about why this is happening. We sought out voices of young people about why they chose to leave, what would make them stay, or why they did stay and what it was that made them stay in beautiful Vermont. We are also going to hear from some teachers and students about this problem.
I grew up in northern Vermont. Primarily, I lived in California for a couple of years when I was young, but other than that, I grew up in Canaan, Vermont, which is far, far up in the Northeast Kingdom, and Plainfield, Vermont, which is in central Vermont.
So I grew up in Connecticut, right outside of New York City, in Darien, and it's a kind of a commuter city or commuter town into New York City. I had researched Vermont in depth and felt like the two places I could consider living would be Middlebury or Burlington, were kind of the two places that attracted me to this area. Just based on what Middlebury has to offer, the size of the community, the proximity to Burlington and then to Montreal is not that far, and the outdoor activities and access are awesome.
Well, Burlington has a lot more going on, like shops, bars, and has a couple colleges up there, so there's way more young people and more stuff to do. Middlebury is really nice though. Like, I like the quietness of it, and like we make our own fun, and all my friends are here, so it's really not that bad.
I was excited to leave Vermont. Interestingly enough, the two other places I applied and got accepted to were Reed College in Oregon and Evergreen State in Washington State. So I kind of wanted to go there primarily to get out of Vermont and live somewhere different. I returned to Vermont because I just really enjoy it. It was the opportunity to leave and be in other places that made me say, hey, you know what? I love Vermont. I want to be there. It's fun to travel. It's fun to go to places. But this is where I want to live. It's where I knew I wanted to settle down, raise kids. But even before that, I mean, my roots are here. You know, my uncle still lives in a farmhouse in central Vermont that was my great-great-grandmother's. Like, I do have some bonds here that are hard to break. But I think that the idea that people have to return also misses a point. If you have more opportunities for entry-level jobs, if you have more opportunities for people getting careers, you're not just getting Vermonters coming home, you're getting people who come from other places. You know, you think about places that are destination cities, Washington, D.C., Phoenix, Arizona, places like that, places where people end up if they're from other places, and those are kind of famous for being that. Part of the reason is things draw people there. And they don't have to be, oh, you're from Washington, D.C., you live here, you came home. No, I'm from Seattle, I'm from northern Wisconsin, I'm from wherever. I ended up in Washington for some reason. So Vermont shouldn't just be trying to keep all the people they have, like, don't leave, we'll build a wall. But instead, how can we bring in everybody? Some of those will be Vermonters coming back, some of those won't be, and that's okay. I think if you look at Middlebury, it's a great example. Unlike almost everywhere else in the state, here in Middlebury, there's a tremendous influx of people from other places who actually live here. If you look at towns like Stowe, you look at towns like Manchester, you look at towns like Woodstock, you have a lot of people who come and visit, who have summer homes, things like that. In Middlebury, you have primarily the college, but also some other firms usually started by or related to college graduates, people associated with it, that help the economy go. Therefore, people move into town and say, okay, I have a reason to move into town. You don't see that in so many other towns in Vermont, and I think Middlebury can be a great lesson for other places in Vermont. It's hard when you don't have a college. So what can these other towns do to be places to go, to be destinations? That's what I think Vermont needs to figure out.
So I think there's the kind of bringing money into Vermont, so I think continuing to push on tourism and making Vermont a wonderful place to come. I think it already is, but I think there's a lot we can do to further that, and I know a lot of people are working on that. The town is doing a lot to market itself, both in Vermont and outside of Vermont, to make Middlebury a destination. That part of it, of letting people know what we have here, is important, and I think that draws people. I think in terms of our community here, the one thing I'm doing in my role as superintendent is really trying to get the word out about how great our schools are and continuing to make them great and greater. I think as a parent, I know how important it is when you're going to go live somewhere and settle there and pay taxes there, you really want to make sure the schools are the best for your kids. So I think that has a big impact on drawing people to Middlebury.
I mean, I think it would be natural from any place you're from, and I followed in this suit being from Connecticut and just wanting a different place to live, kind of extend out into. So I think, whether you grew up in Connecticut or Vermont or Minnesota, I think there's going to be a large group of people who have that kind of inclination. The question becomes, why are they, not why are they leaving to go to college, but what's here to draw them back? And being sparsely populated and lacking in diversity in all kinds of capacities, cultural, commerce, entertainment options. That's going to be a hard sell to come back to a state that doesn't have those things that I think most 22-year-olds are naturally attracted to.
Well, I think a lot of young people just want to go out and see what else is out there, and I think that a lot of people will find that they'll want to come back to Vermont when they're older, have a more stable job. Vermont's pretty relaxed and kind of not a thriving state right now. It's kind of declining in business and numbers, and I know that there's a housing problem in Burlington. I feel like we just have a shortage of a lot of things. I think people would be interested to come up here. We just don't have the jobs or housing for them. Maybe that's what would make Vermont better again, keep people from leaving, is just bringing more people in. And
Well, I think two things. I think first of all, I think generally the narrative is in Vermont that young people leave because they don't have opportunities in Vermont. I think that's true, but I don't necessarily think that's why young people leave. To me, young people leave because they see the world and they want to go experience it. Vermont, I love Vermont. I ended up back here. I could have been anywhere. But there are things about it that are somewhat limiting in the sense of, you see beaches on television, you see cities, you see fun clubs, you see any number of things and you say, I want to go experience that life. And of course you do. And someday when my kids are the age to go somewhere, I want them to go away from Vermont for a while. Do I hope they come back? Sure, I hope so, but they may not. I think that's sometimes missed. But the idea that somehow you have to capture people and make them stay here, to me, misses the point. Of course Vermonters want to go try out something else. Some don't, great. But there's a whole world out there. Why shouldn't you go explore it?
well, I feel like it's a very communal state. We have a really small population, and I feel like as a state we share a lot of the same values, valuing our land and what we eat and what shopping malls we put up or whatever. We really like to preserve this ideal of Vermont, which I think is really important.
Well, I think it's got, because of its proximity to the college, I think it's really different from another town of a similar size in Vermont. I think it brings kind of an international, which I think is what makes Middlebury really unique and interesting. It's also got really, really strong community involvement in what happens in the town, and there's a really strong focus on education. And that's not something that I think you see it to this same level in other communities throughout Vermont. I think Vermont is known for its community involvement, and that's what makes Vermont unique and special. But I think we have something here that I don't see elsewhere, and so I think we're really lucky. I think that it's natural for people to want to leave. When I look at my own experience of growing up in Connecticut and really wanting to leave the state and see what's out there, I understand that. So I don't think that part of it of wanting to see the world, I think that's a natural human inclination that is a good thing. I think the challenge we have in Vermont is the economy and the fact that it's hard for young families to come back to Vermont to find employment, and I think that's where we see the flight of kids leaving the state and going to other places where they can get work. So I think one of the challenges is the fact that the growth in Vermont is somewhat stagnant. I think the second piece about it is I hear from a lot of kids that it's not exciting or there's not enough going on, and it's a fairly rural state. And I think that's reflected in the growth you see here and the growth you see, for example, in Chittenden County, which is an increasing student population, but everywhere else in Vermont is decreasing. So as our farms are becoming more challenging to maintain, and the job market is shifting, I think for a lot of people they're seeing Burlington as an option in areas around Burlington, but the other areas of Vermont they're seeing as not viable just because of the employment piece and also maybe the interest piece in terms of feeling kind of like this is a place I want to live as a young adult or to build a family.
I sometimes think it'd be nice if there was more people, but maybe that wouldn't be as Vermont if there was more people, but we definitely need a lot more jobs. My mom has always been looking for jobs for long times, and it's hard even for me right now looking for a job, and I'm just a high school graduate, so there definitely needs to be more job opportunity for everyone of all ages.
People are right when they say that young people don't live in Vermont because there aren't jobs. For me, it's particularly entry-level jobs in a wide variety of careers. Let's say you're into movies. Are you going to start a career in Vermont making movies? Are you going to start a career in, corporate law in Vermont? Can you go work for brokerage firms? You can't, right? And so, yeah, it's fun to do stuff, but really people want to go where their lives can feel like they're moving forward. That has to do with jobs. I don't want to fix Vermont. I don't want to make Vermont into somewhere else. But if you really are worried about having young people, they need opportunities. And Vermont could be more diverse in that. There might be some things Vermont just can't do, and we have to suck that up. But there could be more going on in that way.
So there you have it, the facts, the opinions, and the reality of why young people are leaving Vermont. It seems obvious why the people who want to stay do. Vermont has a lot to offer in terms of small town atmosphere and outdoor activities. But is that what people really want? Themes of job opportunities, commercial activities, and education seem to be reoccurring when Vermont natives talk about what they think Vermont lacks and what they would like to see more of.
This phenomenon of youth leaving Vermont is bringing about some major issues. With a declining population of young, capable workers, Vermont's economy is suffering. Not only does this make Vermont a relatively expensive place to live, it makes it undesirable to an extent. Vermont's population is like an ecosystem. With the decline of one key organism, youth, it is impossible to reach a healthy symbiosis that is a thriving and desirable state.